All right, we are ready to go. So hopefully everybody had a good morning so far at BB Dev Days and enjoyed some of the main stage content we had going on. And now I guess it's into the session section of our final day here at the 2023 BB Dev Days. So thank you all for participating, being engaged, asking great questions. Hopefully everybody like me, I learned something at this thing every single year. Like my brain hurts usually by the final, actually by the end of every day of it, but definitely by the final day, my brain is just full. So today, to kick us off in Theater 3, we're going to have Dan Korth from Canadian Red Cross. He's going to talk about some Agile importing. And so, Dan, you got everything ready to go, so I'm going to go on mute and pass you the baton, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much and welcome everybody. My name is Dan Korth. I'm a business system analyst with the Canadian Red Cross Society. I believe on my profile it said that I'm a data analyst. The main concentration of my work has always been looking at the way that we bring data from outside sources into our CRM. That starting out with Razor's Edge and then moving into BBCRM. And then also how we make that data in BBCRM contact out to other databases. So we were doing that with our accounting software. And a lot of my concentration, like I say, is working with bigger volume, primarily those direct marketing channels. So I work with our data processing center quite a bit, who receive all of those donations through the various systems, and I work with them and with the teams that represent our vendors to make sure that we are able to get our systems in place and be able to get the right data in. I've likely booked far too much time this morning, and if I am speaking too quickly, somebody feel free to reach out in the chat and let me know. I'm trying to make sure I go slowly, as I'm used to working with my bilingual colleagues who don't always speak English first. Also, I never trust my hardware. I live in the middle of nowhere, which you'll see a picture here in a few seconds when I do my land acknowledgement. So I won't be on a video here just doing my screen share and being able to read my notes and everything. I'm trying not to stress this computer out too much. First off, Agile importing. Agile is a buzzword that is used in so many different ways that I wanted to just take a quick moment to say what we mean by Agile importing is that what we want to do is import correct data only and be able to go back and easily import more data to existing records when we know that we have correct data. So all of this machine learning, AI talk that we've been going on about, everybody knows that garbage in is garbage out. So we would rather feed it no data than feed it bad data. Come on, computer. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from traditional unceded territory of the Wet'suwet'en, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which these nations first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wet'suwet'en title and established rules that for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you to all nations of Turtle Island for your stewardship of these lands in the face of the hardships which have been put upon you. And I actually added this slide over the weekend, so it's not included in the handouts that are available for this. So some facts about our BBCRM, just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, and also to give you an idea of, is this type of a strategy going to really help you? So we have close to 7.1 million constituent records, and I pulled this number on April 14th. We have just over 30.6 million revenue records. I actually did a check yesterday. I think we added something like 20,000 records over the last week. But there was 2.3 million distinct revenue records that we added in 2022. So as you can guess, with a data precision goal of 0.2%, that's still a ton of errors that are possible to happen in the database, and nobody has time to fix that many errors. So we import a lot of information that is added by people who aren't paid to add the information on whatever record or web form we're getting it from. We have volunteers entering stuff. Then there's also the donors, and everybody knows it's really easy to make mistakes when you're typing. So what we want to make sure of that we understand the health and quality of this data. And sometimes that data isn't very good where it's coming from in the original source. We also have some canvassing vendors, which include some face-to-face canvassers and outbound and inbound telemarketing vendors. So as you can guess, though they buy into our mission statement and really want to help us do our work, they aren't as invested as regular employees often are. Another big thing to know about our BBCRM is that we actually use this as a subledger. It's not feeding into like a financial NXT or anything like that. We're actually using a Microsoft AX accounting system, but the idea here is that before we are actually posting records inside our database, they are being matched to bank deposits so that we know in our accounting software what there is for donation revenue that we're going to be able to spend in times of need. Sometimes the important information that's really big about the reporting side of things, it's not available when we're getting that money in the bank. So what we want to do is concentrate on getting that stuff that is just for getting the bank reconciliation in, and adding anything else is just a bonus on top of that, compared to, and then being able to go back and update it when the information becomes available. So as I say here, in the past, we didn't always have that as a choice. And again, I'm gonna actually, sorry. Really having a nervous morning here. If anyone's ever done these demonstrations before, you might get an idea of what I'm talking about. But yes, in the past, we didn't always get a chance to go back and add this information because it's often needing to be done manually. So as we continue through, I'm going to talk about a recent example of how this reporting information isn't always available when we want to start adding our donations into the database. And with that one, again, I think we've already heard about the smoke going around everywhere from the Quebec wildfires. Earlier, we were dealing with some wildfires that were in Alberta. And we had a lot of questions coming up about how we were going to form our email solicitation marketing effort. So one of those big questions is, because there was a chance that we might have something going on in Quebec, were we going to do a separate marketing effort that just focused on that area, or were we going to do different segments within this marketing effort that might reach out to that? So again, what we did at the start of this is we made sure that our web forms were able to include our marketing effort that we were going to need, but we didn't have to activate the marketing effort at the time of turning on the web form. So when we sent out the emails, of course, people are going to follow the links. They'll land on that web form. That donation gets tagged to us as being with this particular marketing effort. And we import it without that, with the knowledge later on that we're going to go back and fix it. So what does that look like? We have two main imports that we're doing. Starting here in the blue is, and of course, everything that happens up before, this is a big document, but it comes down to having detail that is all inside our SQL database, where we are able to compare between read-only data and the data that's coming from our web forms. And in that same set of data, you can see here where I've got a bit of payment gateway information. Up above is the actual web form provider. And everything is coming into our Azure web space to be compared by Power BI with existing donor information and existing revenue information, like what are active marketing efforts. Then we do our import in with whatever information is available when we need to get that import done. Right now, that means that my people who are reconciling are basically building out or looking at tables that are in Power BI and matching those up to the bank to be able to export them out. So in this next screen, it kind of looks like this, where they've got a table that's in Power BI. And when the marketing effort GUID isn't here, it's because this is not finding an exact match inside our database. These are all fact tables, basically, where what I'm doing is going out into the Unity database to find what could be matching here from the online forums. And then that's going to return all of the data that we need to do our import. All of the Synapse API and surface data, surfacing of these data from the outside sources is being done by another team at CRC who actually specialize in creating our safe connections. So in the when you're looking at this and setting up that Synapse, it's not going to be something that I could really give details on, but what I can help out with is once you're looking at that data, how you would be able to join that together. So with our online forms, we have a particular revenue attribute that is attached to the payment ID. And then we're just pulling that revenue attribute back out through the database, through the read-only connection to be able to match up and make these changes later on. Just checking my notes here because I've been kind of just talking from the background as I go, and that covers that one. Before I move on, I just want to see if there's any questions. I don't see anything coming up in the chat or any hands up, so more than happy to stop at any point. Like I say, I probably booked too much time here as we're moving through these quite quickly.
Yep, you're good right now. No questions coming in yet.
Great. So after the original import has been done, then we're getting into the pieces where that original import's attribute ID is going to be being compared with what's in the read-only database. So starting at the top on this table, we're just pulling kind of a select star from marketing segmentation to get the list of all of our active marketing efforts. That needs to have an exact match to the data that is coming from our web form in its marketing effort column. That will let us supply the GUID. So the first step in this report is to make sure that whatever is inside this table is able to match here as being an active marketing effort. And this just gives the one team the ability to be able to export this out. They can go, and you see here where there's quite a few typos, so they can do a find and replace to be able to remove those pluses and make them spaces. They can go and double check that this blended giving is active, or maybe it's got a missing number at the back or anything along those lines. Then they're going to feed that into Excel and just use a concat formula to create SQL case statements that allow us to basically just overwrite what was coming from here so that it will match to here. Revenue 1 is, again, very similar to a select star from revenue. This one is actually included in the handouts, and it's looking at our specific attribute that I mentioned earlier and using that to match up as one record in our web form files so that it can find out with that marketing effort. And at this point, if it doesn't have a marketing effort inside our database, this table gets populated with, these are the suggested imports that you can do to add the marketing effort onto records. The second handout that I had available, or that I put up for you, is this constituent appeals table. And what this does is it's looking at the constituent appeals that match specific appeal IDs and pulling out which mailings are attached to those. And it's looking to match a constituent appeals mailing to a revenue marketing effort. And once it finds a match, it pulls the source code from that and populates this last table that allows us to import a source code that directly matches to the constituent appeal. So again, we're getting rid of a lot of those chances for typos and pieces like that. So this is really the big part of the Agile importing piece. It's all about being able to create that import that happens at a later time, where again, everything is being done with exact record IDs. We're very confident with these, and we can actually allow them in BVDL to do staging and processing so that we can do 30,000 changes very quickly with no extra watches. And then just the main watch being that a human is going to overlook and see that what we have written inside the import file makes sense to what we're doing at the time. And that jumped forward a little bit faster than what I was expecting. Love having the multiple screens, but sometimes things go a little bit sideways for me. Let me get back to, right. So the only real step that's left here with our BVDL piece is once it is imported to the revenue update batch, it's sitting as a revenue update batch. I haven't quite figured out that next step that I can have it, that it would auto commit that like we would do with a regular import, but we are importing to a revenue update batch, which to me was a huge change. There are some big items to watch for if you do decide to use BVDL to import to a revenue update batch. There are only a few fields that I've found so far that it does work very well for. And that is, the direct first-class revenue fields and things like source code, marketing effort. It does a great job pulling that over into the revenue update batch so that you can choose to update multiple records with different values all over the place instead of using the regular generate revenue update batch, which is just basically a one-to-one replacement with a selection of records. When we do this import, it is not creating a post to GL adjustment because the marketing effort is not mapped in our GLs. But if yours did that, then you might want to watch for that. I have found that when I didn't include them, the do not receipt, the payment method, the card type, and the other method would be blank, because in the revenue update batch, if it has a blank value, it will actually feed over into the revenue record. So just a couple of ones that I found as I was going through that ended up causing a little bit of issues for me. And with Power BI, when you're running from the web and just doing an export of a table visualization, so we do the export so that it is a just a CSV file, which automatically comes out as UTF-8, which again is a big bonus, but that will have a maximum of 30,000 records at a time. So you can see here, it did do the 30,000 records for me. It took about 5 hours and 20 minutes to do it. And then I think there was about 4 hours of time when it was actually committing revenue update batch after that, when I had to go into batch entry and click the commit on that. We do have the team running this weekly now, the data processing center. So they are able to import, it's several hundred records that they're importing a week. And actually, I'm going to go back a couple of slides here just to get to that screen. So the way that we're basically doing it right now is that they will import everything that's on this step 1 and everything that's on, or the step 2 and everything that's on the step 3. So what you're looking at is within a week of the record being added without a marketing effort, as long as that marketing effort is active, it's being added onto the revenue. And then a week later, if there's a matching source code and constituent appeals, that's being added to the revenue as well. So it's a little bit of a delay to get that extra detail into our reporting, but the value that we can see in reporting, it's just going to make it so that we can really start getting that deeper detail out of our segments and source codes. So some extra benefits I've tried to write out here. Our data processing center only needs to wait for the designation and appeals, and the data processing center is responsible for adding any new designation and appeals because those are post-to-GL fields. Our current process that is used to create the SHF, especially for our email marketing efforts, it's got a lot of manual steps to it. So it can take a little bit of extra time for the team to be able to finalize that file. And it takes some of that stress off, especially when we're in a high stress situation like an appeal for wildfires or a natural disaster, that they have a little bit more time to take a breath and make sure that that file is correct before it gets imported into the database and sets all of those source codes for us. Another neat thing with Brightline Data Link that we have found is that it is able to add records to the constituent appeals so that we're able to emulate having a person in an SHF file, even though they aren't really in the SHF file, because we do most of our reporting out of the constituent appeals tables. So using another one that we found that's big is using the source code from the constituent record for matching up to our revenue record. We found that there was quite a bit of work with trying to get the correct source code to included inside the link that is in the emails. And sometimes it was writing the same source code on records where it should have been different source codes. So this just makes it that we can make sure that things that are in that SHF and say, this is how we ask these people, are what we're reporting back out in the revenue itself. With some minor changes in the way that we're looking at these records, we can apply these principles in several other types of donations and payments. One of the projects that I'm currently working on is we're trying to use our tributes area kind of as a way to track which donations came in through an online portal and add that on to whomever actually asked for that online portal. So that ability to pull all of the records out based on that online portal, find which ones need to be updated and add that tribute onto it, that's something that we're looking at trying to do in the future. And that's actually, you'll see it here in one of my next steps. There's a lot of automation opportunities as we start to work more with that team that does the data laking work for us. So that Synapse data lake is going to actually allow us to bring in some connections directly from our SQL read-only connection. And then once we have this data in the same area, instead of using Power BI tables, we can just create a single query that will save a flat file for us and import that from SFTP using the connectors that we have directly from Blackbaud. So, mostly out of the box type materials that we're just using in a different way to try and make things work as best we can. Actually, before I go on to my next steps, are there any questions or anything? I don't see anything in the chat and haven't really seen anything else. So unless I see a hand up, good, seeing thumbs up, we'll continue on. So the next steps for us, currently I'm working with a developer over at Brightline, and we're working on making it so that we can import these changes with tributes, with campaigns, with solicitor credits, And I'm still fighting as best I can to get the opportunity on there. We'll see if that actually happens. I know there's a lot of work that Brightfine's doing in other areas to try and work with opportunities. So it might be that something is already in the works for that and they don't need to deal with it for this. I also have some other customizations that we work with that we're able to do this agile importing for. We are able to look at Google BigQuery and find our UTM data for organic traffic and for web searches and things like that, and import those as revenue attributes. And that's just through a record system that was created by the Zuri group for us. But I'm pretty sure that you could make Brightfine Data Link do the same thing just by providing the right details of which revenue record you want to add it to and what those attributes actually should have for details and pieces like that. Thanks, Bill. Good to see that you're working on the opportunities. We also have from Blackbaud, when we deployed, I'm not sure if this is something that is one of those RCP type templates where they've got a group of customizations that you can just get out of the box, but we are able to do a constituent update style batch that allows us to add revenue recognition credits. And then the last and final piece that we're looking at is if we start to move into Azure Functions, which is another sub piece of Synapse, we should be able to create our own custom API endpoints, which we could then reach to with BVDL to be able to do automated API imports without files. Great. Well, thank you very much for that. And an awesome quote here from a couple of people on the team who are always bringing this up is, if it isn't in the database, did it really happen? Bill, in response to your question, we are actually doing it as a query to a Parquet file, and then that is what's surfacing into our data lake. And to do that, we had to reach out to Blackbaud support to get our IP for the machine that's actually running Azure whitelisted with them. So it was allowed to connect to that port and download the details. As to if it's robust for us, give me a little bit longer on that. We did run into a bit of an issue where our internal team changed the IP of the machine that was reaching out, and we've got to go back and get the new IP whitelisted. But I believe other than that, we were actually having things working fairly well where it was connecting and being able to refresh on a daily basis.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. Or if you want to step on stage and ask your question, I'm more than happy to have people join us on stage too.
Well, and I'm kind of surprised it got me to 25 minutes here.
Looks like we got a question there from Nathan now.
Fine, options is automating file.
Nathan asks, have you investigated with Brightfine options for automating the file import to BVDL?
We have not done it with this particular one, Nathan. What we do have running right now is with Brightfine Data Link, we've got a set of queries in Visual Cron that run against our SQL read-only, and they are picking up pieces of data that we are able to manipulate automatically and save in a flat file that then comes through the Blackbaud RCP for the SFTP unzip piece, and then we import that using Brightfine Data Link. One thing that we did find was because of our encryption at rest requirements, and like basically if it's on our own sftp.redcross.ca. It has to be in a zip file, if a password protected zip file, if it includes any private information. So when we do that file, it then has to be transferred over into BBCRM. BBCRM unzips the file so it's back to being a CSV. And then Brightline Data Link will pull that CSV file just on a scheduled import. After that, we do have the automated file handling turned on, that it will archive the file into a subfolder in the SFTP that's right inside the BBCRM SFTP database.
Got another one here from. Oh,
it was a really interesting hack. So it took, because of again, our encryption at rest kind of makes things a little bit difficult. What we had to do with that, Lori, is we actually bring the files over into BBCRM, and the unzip happens right in the / production folder, and then on the BBDL import job, we create a file mask with a wildcard in it, and that's run on a scheduled queue. So basically what it will do is every day that it runs on that scheduled queue, it looks for that file mask and imports any file that meets the file mask. And then because it's got the file archiving turned on, it then drops the files into that subfolder after it's done. That one, I'm definitely, feel free to reach out to me through email or something like that. Me and my team can walk you through how we've done a lot of these setups. I know as well that Bill is looking to have a meeting with me later on, that we're going to talk about how my team has been using BBDL, and hopefully that can maybe add a little bit of documentation. That's been my only real thing with BBDL, is sometimes I find it's hard to find a bit of the documentation and the community aspect. So Bill, if we can get a heavier community detail going there, that would really help in the long run.
That's what I love about Dev Days, making things happen. All right, any other questions for Dan before we let him go? Well, Dan, definitely thank you for this content. Thank you for stepping in and presenting it. You shared earlier in your slides what y'all's dealing with up there. So, thinking about y'all as y'all respond, your organization responds to all that's going on. I saw the news this morning, how much of the smoke, like the satellite imagery and stuff like that. So definitely know we're thinking of you guys up there across the border.
Well, thank you very much. We definitely appreciate the thoughts. And as always, any additional help that you want to give, go, I believe it's redcross.donate.ca, and happy to hear from you guys. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thanks, Dan. And thank you all for attending, and hope you enjoy the rest and final day of BB Dev Days. Thank you all.